Hello, middle school parents. Last week, I discussed with you the fact that in chapel this week, we'll be discussing the virtue of prudence. And so I gave you 3 concepts last week that you could teach your preteen that would help them develop prudence in their life. So I'm going to continue this week by giving you the final 2. The 4th concept in teaching your middle schooler to be more prudent is to teach them that wise people learn from the mistakes of others so that they don't have to repeat those mistakes or earn those consequences for themselves. And so this is something we repeatedly shared with our own son in our own house as he was growing up, and still do as a college student. But we try to drill that into his head early and often. And so you want to teach them to consult God's word, to ask teachers and older Christians for advice, to observe what happens to their peers and others when they know that they made a similar decision. You know, your child doesn't have to be burned by the stove to know that it hurts. And so sometimes watching someone else get burned or seeing the scar from an earlier burn or reading a story of a similar situation in God's Word can teach them that same lesson without them having to experience physical pain or the consequence. And so why suffer a negative consequence when you can avoid it entirely by making a wise choice? The 5th concept that you'll want to teach your preteen is that feelings are not always the best indication of a poor or a wise choice. And we live in a culture today, as you know, that constantly tells us to go with our gut or to do what feels right. And unfortunately, sometimes Satan has gotten into our head and into our gut. And so what is the worst possible decision of all may feel great to your preteen, or at least at first. And so that's why we call it temptation. If sins didn't look appealing, then no one would sin. And so your preteen can factor feelings into their equation, but you really need to teach them to err on the side of caution when doing so. Because if it feels wrong, it may very well be. And if it feels right, it may not be right at all. So taking the time to teach your child to be prudent when making decisions won't guarantee that they'll never make a bad decision, though. It will, however, increase the chances that they'll make a wise, godly choice. So I thank you for choosing Hickory Grove Christian for your preteen's education. I consider it an absolute joy and a privilege to meet you and your preteen in the middle each day. Thanks much. I wish you a great week and know that I'm here praying for you and your family each day.